It is a sunny Tuesday morning in Düsseldorf and I am sitting at work at my desk. I am checking my private email for what seems the 20th time refreshing that button. I know I'm not supposed to check my private mail, but I'm waiting for that one email that might change my career forever. Will I get the new job or not? At around 9:58, I hit the refresh button again and there it is, the email that I've been waiting for. I open it. I read it, and there are the words, "We welcome you to our team." I was super excited. I was super happy. Finally, I got to quit this dead-end job that I'm in. Until it hits me, wait, I've never quit a job in Germany, and I don't know, A, how to do it, and B, does my work permit even allow this? In this video, we will talk about 7 steps that you can take to quit your job in Germany. Hey, my name is Jen, and I'm from Guatemala.
And mine is Yvonne, and I'm German.
And together we're from simplegermany.com, where we create content to empower internationals to settle into life in Germany more smoothly. Step number 1, check your contract for your notice period.
So the broad generalization that I often hear about notice periods in Germany is, they are 3 months. But that is actually not true at all. So I have seen contracts with a 1 month notice period. I've seen contracts with 3 months or like 1 month until the end of the quarter. There's all kinds of weird formulations. But in matter of fact, what it comes down to is your work contract. Something about a notice period needs to be stated in there. And in German, that's the word is Kündigungsfrist. And if nothing is stated, then the legal, like the statutory notice periods apply. And those depend on how long you've actually been working in that per se company. For example, if you're still in your probation period, meaning in your months 0 to 6 of working at the company, but the legal statutory notice period is 2 weeks only, and 2 weeks like directly. If you've been working at your company 7 months to 2 years, then the statutory notice period is 4 weeks to the 15th or the end of the month. So 30th.
Calendar month.
Calendar month, those 30th or 31st or 28th, depending on the month.
The month.
Now, if you've been working for more than 2 years, but less than 5 years at the company, then the notice period is 1 month to the end of the calendar month. And if you've been there more than 5 years, then the notice period is 2 months to the end of the calendar month by law.
Now, step number 2 is to check when you need to hand in your resignation letter.
Now, all of the mumbo jumbo I just said becomes important for you to calculate when it is time to resign in order to potentially start a new job or do other things. Because just because it's written in your contract, you still need to calculate what it actually means to your particular case.
As Yvonne mentioned, in Germany, it is quite normal that the notice period could either be to the end of the month or the 15th of the month. To give you an example, let's say we're going to quit and our notice period is to the end of the month. If I present my resignation letter on the 1st of April, then the notice period starts on the 1st of May.
Correct. So you're pretty much losing a month because you've handed in your notice period on the 1st of a month.
Versus if I would have handed in it at the end of March, then the notice period would have started on that 1st of April.
Correct. Now, knowing those dates is quite important because by law, a resignation in Germany only becomes valid once you hand in your letter on time. We talk about the letter in the next step, but on time means the reception date of like the date that your employer received it. So whether you handed it in person or actually mailed it by postal mail, that is the day that matters, whenever that was received by your employer.
True. Also, an additional thing, for example, if I would hand in my resignation letter on the 20th of March, that is also valid, it would also be starting from the 1st of April.
Correct, yes.
It doesn't have to be because the end of the month, it has to be the last day of the month.
Yeah.
That I need to
or if it's still the
valid.
15th and you hand it in on the 14th, then,
or the 13th.
The 13th, the notice period starts from that 15th or 16th onwards.
Yeah. Number 3 is to actually write your resignation letter. As Yvonne already mentioned, it is important that you hand this resignation letter personally or through postal mail. It needs to be a physical copy and it needs to be signed.
Hand signed.
Hand signed, not digitally signed. If the resignation letter is sent by email or any other or it's digitally sent, it's invalid. I guess also you can send the letter through fax. I think that's also valid, right?
No, it's still a copy. No,
it was supposed to be a joke about fax.
Yeah, no, there is no ha-ha in this moment because this is really, really strict. Even like a, let's say, originally printed hand-signed letter that you scan in and send as a PDF via email is invalid. So it really needs to be a hard copy that you sign, that you ideally give personally. If you can't, you need to mail it by postal mail. And that's why it's so important that they know the date, because you need to take into consideration the time it takes for the mail to arrive, because the date it arrived will be the decisive date for when all the time and numbers start counting.
Yes, okay, very good point. And of course, in Germany, there's a certain format for the resignation letter, but don't worry about it. In our guide, you will find a template that you can download, which you can check in the description box below. Once you have your resignation letter, be sure to print 2 copies. This will become important in the next step when we talk to your supervisor. You talk, because you're the one quitting. Step number 4, before you talk with your supervisor, is to check how many vacation days you have left.
And this is not a necessity, it's just a nice to have for your preparation for the talk with the supervisor, because depending on how many days you have, vacation days you have left or have taken already, those need to be calculated in your time left at work. And this is important to know so you can have a proper handover and leave your job more smoothly.
That's very true. In the example that we gave before, let's say your notification period will end at the end of June and you still have 10 days of holidays, then you can of course take them in the middle of that notification notice period. Why do I see notice period?
But it is quite common to take them at the end.
At the end. So that means you would theoretically maybe stop working at the 20th-ish of June, and that would be your last day at work. You take your vacation days and then you start fresh for a new job.
Correct, yeah.
If you're curious on how to calculate your vacation days, we also have a detailed guide that you can check out in the description box below about vacation days in Germany.
And especially also how they apply, because depending on how long you have been employed and what time of year you actually quit, those get counted differently.
Yes. Now for step number 5 is to actually schedule that meeting with your supervisor or boss. Now, if you work remotely, you can of course schedule a video call. It is kind of seen very professional and I would say respectful if you quit in person, not just to send an email, hey, I'm quitting, this is my resignation letter, ciao, but have a conversation with your supervisor or the person you need to quit with or to.
Yes.
And here's a brief, it doesn't have to be this way, but just a few pointers for you not to forget to touch in the meeting with your supervisor.
For starters, start the conversation with the fact that you will be quitting.
Yes.
Don't beat around the bush and, only after 10 minutes actually say, oh, by the way, I'm quitting. No. You need to be confident, announce, I have something to tell you, I've decided to leave the job, blah, 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 blah. It's very important that you are also positive in this conversation, that you are thankful, thank for the opportunities, that maybe certain projects you had the chance to work on, point out what you enjoyed, what you learned, but also what you're excited for in the new role or in the new company, without being negative about what you might have not liked it, which is maybe a reason why you are changing in the first place.
Yes, at all costs, I would say avoid talking too many details of the nitty-gritty of what has upset you in the past and why you have decided to change companies.
Yeah. If you would like to maybe give some hints to your supervisor or boss of what could be improved in the future or how you would have felt even more encouraged, that could be something to discuss in an exit interview if there is one in your company.
Yes, very good point. If you're having this meeting personally, then the next step could be to hand in your resignation letter. Again, this paper, you need to present it. Remember, we said to print 2 copies. On one copy is for your supervisor to keep for the records of the company, which most likely they will bring to HR. And the second copy is for your supervisor to sign for your records, where that signature also states the date, because then you will have the date that the resignation letter has been received and from when the whole notification period math starts kicking in. Notice period. Why do I call it notification period? Anyways, if you're working remotely, this is the opportunity when you ask your supervisor, to whom do I mail the letter to, or how do I proceed with this? And then they can provide you the details, or they will let you know through an email afterwards or whatnot.
Now, the next talking point with the supervisor is how to announce that you're leaving the team to your colleagues. Because in certain companies there is a way of doing it, or maybe they would like to delay it for a couple of days because there's a big event happening the next day and they don't want any disturbance. So it really depends a little bit on the culture. I would say the faster you are able to announce it, the better, also for your sake. But that really should be in coordination, an agreement with your supervisor. Also, whether you do it yourself or he or she will announce it. Usually those things get announced in the next team meeting. Yeah,
100% agreed. The next talking point can be about talking about open projects and how to hand over these projects. So this discussion could be more in relation that who would take your projects, for your supervisor to have the opportunity to think who can take over your projects, and any procedures that your supervisor would like to be implemented for the handover and whatnot.
Yeah, and if there's no designated person yet, or there won't be, and you kind of like leaving your position to empty hands, then also it's super important to discuss that you give a written handover so that whoever will take over in the future has some guideline to follow.
Yes.
And as a possible last talking point with a supervisor could be the topic of vacation days. Now, leave this as last because you don't want to be sounding like you can't wait to leave the company. Yeah. But of course, it is important for you to plan, but as well for your supervisor to plan like the schedule of the team and projects in that sense. So discuss openly or ask for the supervisor, please, in the next X days to look into the system to calculate them for everyone to be on the same page and just have clear communication.
Step number 6 is to complete your notice period. In this period, because you have officially quit your job, a lot of people tend to just not give a crap anymore and just not attend meetings or be late or not worry about things. Call in sick a lot. Don't be that person. This is your last kind of like mile to run. So try at your very best to keep being respectful, professional, open, attending meetings, still participating, finishing tasks, of course, because at the end of the day, it's kind of like the impression that you leave with your last employer is also valid, because who knows, maybe down the line that same supervisor could be at another job that you might be interested in. You might come back to the company. You might need a reference from this employer. So it's good to leave the door open and to not burn any bridges.
Yep.
And step 7, a very nice step, is to prepare for your last day at work.
Yeah, and that could be anything from cleaning your desk, from bringing all the equipment, company equipment that you were handed in, like a mobile phone, laptop, other equipment that you need for your role, to hand it back in, clean it ideally beforehand. And if your company culture allows it and your team is cool, you can bring some sweets or a cake, or even invite them for a round of beers after work, just to be amicable, joyful, maybe a little, one laughing, one crying eye, depending on how your job actually was and how you felt in your environment. As a super important info is, which we didn't mention beforehand, you should always ask your employer, your supervisor, HR, whoever is in charge, for your Zeugnis, Arbeitszeugnis, meaning your reference letter. By law, you have the right to receive one, but you also need to inquire for it. Additionally, you might want to ask for a Urlaubsbescheinigung, which, depending on that, your future employer might ask for, which is kind of like a paper that tells the new employer how many vacation days you took, so that they can kind of like abide the law by providing you enough, but also not too many vacation days in the rest of the year, kind of like. So both papers you need to ask for, and depending on the bureaucracy of the company, they're either prepared for already, or they will be sent to you within a few days, sometimes weeks, after you have left the job via postal mail.
Which is also totally normal to receive it also after a few weeks, sometimes even months.
Yeah, you need to be persistent.
Now, what happens if you're leaving Germany? So if you're not only quitting your job, but you're also leaving the country, then there's a few other things that you need to take care of outside of your employer. We have a whole written guide it's like a step-by-step checklist that you can follow, which we will link in the description box below. Now to the big question. What happens if you quit your job and you're a non-EU or EEA citizen, meaning your job is tied to your residence permit? What happens then?
So there is actually a big milestone, which happens usually at the 2-year mark. Now, usually, big disclaimer, we are not immigration lawyers by far. So anything that we mention right here goes from our own experience, and you need to please consult either a lawyer or the Ausländerbehörde for your specific case. But the general rule that we've experienced is that in the first 2 years, while you're still on a temporary residence permit, your permit is tied to that one job and employer that you currently have. So the moment you leave that employer and you don't ask for permission beforehand from either the Ausländerbehörde or sometimes also the Agentur für Arbeit, you run risks of losing your residence permit. So in the first 2 years, kind of like either suck it up and finish those 2 years. If it's really bad and you really want to change, you need to jump the hoops and ask for that appointment at either one of the two bureaucratic instances, Agentur für Arbeit or Ausländerbehörde. Get the permission, and then you can worry-free change your job.
Yes, what I have heard about this getting the permission is pretty much them just reviewing the contract and making sure you're still being paid the minimum amount for international workers to get the work permit.
Yeah, or compared the minimum amount compared to other people in the same company.
Right, as well. It's more like a fairness kind of treatment is what I've heard. I cannot validate this,
No,
right?
that's true, because that's also what needs to happen before you ever come to Germany. The whole bureaucratic hoops sometimes are for your protection, that you don't get exploited, but they still take a lot of time and can be quite annoying.
Yes. Now, if you are past this 2-year mark, at least in our experience, then you have the potential of getting a work permit that is still temporary. However, it is no longer tied to that specific company and employer. Also, if you pass the 4-year mark, at least in our experience, you get the permanent residence permit. 5-year mark, you get the permanent residence permit, and there again, you're not tied to an employer. And if this is the case, then you just need to bring your old contract and your new contract to your next appointment to renew your residence permit, and that should suffice.
Exactly. So pretty much saying the first 2 years are crucial, and after that you have a little bit more freedom.
After some tedious research and help from Ivan, I was able to quit my job smoothly. And because I had passed my 2-year mark at this point, then I only needed to bring both my old documents, my old work contract with my new work contract when I renewed my residence permit, and everything was fine. If you're curious on how you can maximize your vacation days in Germany, then make sure to click on the video that's here on the left. Until next time, choose! If you're curious on how you can maximize your vacation days in your new job, then make sure to click on the video that's here on the links. Until next side.